Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's both an honor and a pleasure to be a part of the Chemtech conference and the discussions of this panel on unlocking opportunities for specialty chemicals, moving towards our Atmanirbhar Bharat. We have a very eminent panel with us today. We have Mr. Samir Somaiya, CMD of Godavari Biorefineries, Mr. Nilesh Kulkarni, Director Commercial of Gharda Chemicals, Mr. Anand S., President Finance Specialty Chemicals of Deepak Nitrite, and Dr. G.V.G. Rao, who's the President at Atul Limited. I would like to kind of share a few initial thoughts to set the tone for the discussion today, and then invite each of the eminent speakers to share their thoughts on this topic. Just give me a second as I get my, can you see my screen now? Yep. Okay, the Indian specialty chemicals market is expected to grow at a CAGR of almost about 12 to 15% over the next 5 years, mainly driven by the increased demand from the user segments, as well as the encouragement and push that the government is giving this sector. India's specialty chemical sector accounts for almost about 20% of the overall chemical industry, which is around $170 billion right now, targeted to grow to about $320 to $350 billion in the next 3 to 5 years. So the specialty chemical sector is likely to witness, as I said earlier, 12 to 15% CAGR growth, largely driven by end-use applications, along with the feedstock availability, which is right now stable, though we would need to kind of put in far more larger number of capacity or larger amount of capacity for feedstock availability as we grow. The overall cost effectiveness of the Indian specialty chemical sector is better than most countries, and that's another key driver for the sector, specialty chemical sector going forward. We've been witnessing certain strategic shifts in China. These include China wanting to move away from certain chemicals, and you know, as all of us are aware, China accounts for almost about 40% of the global trade in chemicals, and with that size a sector deciding to kind of reduce their participation in certain chemicals while increasing their focus on some of the emerging chemicals, whether it's around electronics or some of the emerging technology related chemicals, that will put up an opportunity for countries like India to increase their share in the global trade. India right now accounts for just about 3.5 to 4% of global trade in chemicals. Then I think the government initiatives and support being provided to the sector are going to be another key driver for our growth. Our competitive cost of manufacturing, availability of good quality talent, our increasing focus on research and development is another key driver that will drive our growth, and our movement towards premiumization of our products as we focus on more and more high-end products and specialty chemicals, moving away from some of the bulk chemicals is another trend which is going to drive the growth for the Indian specialty chemicals. Some of the trends that we have been seeing in this sector globally is, and as well as in India, is there are capacity enhancements to match the growing demand both from the domestic market as well as export opportunities. Moving towards supply chain de-risking, both happening at the global level. Again, some of the recent trends, especially during the pandemic time, a lot of countries have realized that their over-dependence on a single country is not a good strategy, and hence supply chain de-risking by some of the larger players globally is likely to is a trend that we are seeing, and which is going to impact countries like India and the specialty chemical sectors here. Investment in research-led innovation is another trend that we are witnessing in the sector. increasing digitization, whether it is operations, whether it is connect with customers, whether it's supply chain, etc., is something which we are witnessing a lot in any case, and this has been accelerated over the last 12 months because of the pandemic. Again, climate change has come under significant focus both during the pandemic time as well as otherwise. And now with the regime change in the US, with US kind of showing their inclination to come back into the overall global discussions on climate change, we are witnessing a trend of increased focus on green products. So that's some of the backdrop that I thought let me start with as far as the specialty chemicals sector is concerned. But in order to harness this opportunity that is present in front of the specialty chemical sector in India, we would need support on availability and domestic manufacturing of key starting materials, active ingredients, and certain key intermediates. While we do have a shortage of feedstock and some of the intermediates already for specialty chemicals, this is likely to get more acute and accentuated as our sector grows and the demand for feedstock and ingredients increase. I've just put a small example of agrochemicals here. We do have a large dependence on imports for active ingredients in agrochemicals, for instance, and similarly we have the same situation of high import of APIs, key starting materials. Even in a segment within specialty chemicals, which accounts for about $7 billion, we have about $2.4 billion of imports. So these are things which, again, need to be focused on. We need support from the industry as well as the other ecosystem players, including the government, so that we can address the need for feedstocks, key starting materials, as well as the intermediates. The growth in the Indian chemical industry would need to be built on scale and cost competitiveness as being the key pillars. This is something which a lot of the existing players are working towards, are focusing on, but this is something that will need to be a continued focus. While within specialty chemicals, you have chemicals where the global size of the industry could be as small as 150,000 tons, but there are other larger chemicals where we are yet to see, especially when we compare ourselves with some of the European and especially Chinese players, the scale that we see in manufacturing, we need to step that up, and that will bring both economies as well as the size of the plant growing will help in the overall cost competitiveness and even looking at how do we improve our export potential as well. So I think what's important is to keep in mind that as we go through this growth and have higher investments, we need to bring in larger world scale plants to bring in cost competitiveness as well. The other point that I wanted to emphasize on was that the industry needs to kind of look at competitiveness coming from R&D, getting closer to the global customers, doing co-development of products. So those are areas that need to be focused on as we go through our growth phase in the sector. Again, I must say that a large number of the sector players, especially the leading players in this sector, are already taking steps towards that or are already working towards that. But as we see growth coming into the sector, I think the enablers that the Indian industry needs needs to focus on are R&D, co-development, looking at technology collaboration, focusing on new products and new processes, kind of being in step with the developments that are happening in the developed economies, and also look at how can we boost collaboration with some of the academic institutes, both in India as well as outside, to further support this enabler. And finally, the point that I wanted to emphasize on climate change and sustainability is kind of has already been in focus in the chemical sector over the last 10, 15, 20 years. I think the need to focus on sustainability is getting accentuated quite a bit because of some of the recent events as well, not just the pandemic, but some of the climate change aspects, etc. So I think the sector would need to focus on sustainable products, sustainable feedstocks and energy sources, sustainable processes and the business models. The key enablers here that the sector would need is again R&D, product development with a focus on sustainability, technology upgrade, government policies which would encourage that, as well as building the right level of infrastructure and ecosystem around that. So with that, I would like to kind of now pause here and probably start inviting the eminent speakers. So let's start by first inviting Nilesh Kulkarni. Nilesh, you have been kind of doing a lot of thinking, and your organization is doing a lot of work around Atmanirbhar, if I may say, and self-sufficiency of the sector. So I would like to kind of share your thoughts on some of these themes that we have for the specialty chemicals industry.
Yeah, thanks, Devinder. I think you've been very succinct and very interesting in your presentation in the beginning. So you have set the stage right for this discussion. When we talk about Atmanirbhar, I think India has always been very Atmanirbhar on its needs and requirements as and when it gets. Even today, if you look at it, we have a large amount of, take for example, our company, we've been kind of innovating for the last 50 years, and we have been building molecules which have probably never been done before in India. I think India is all set to become completely self-reliant and completely dependent on its own production. And I think if you look at the 4 or 5 things that are required for it, you look at the manufacturing capability. First, I think most important thing is scientific capability. Do we have the scientific capability? Absolutely, yes. We have the best of institutions that are there in the country, the best of manpower, the best of quality of people around, and the best thinking power available. Do we have then, look at going next to scale it into manufacturing platforms? Do we have that? Yes, we do. We also have that. We've had the best-in-class manufacturing units across the country. We're exposed globally. If you look at it now, when the de-risking strategy from the large players globally come, you're already seeing movement within the chemical sector in India. That only shows that there is capability to do that. I mean, if I have to break it further, do we have the capability for R&D? Yes, we do. I think India, over the last couple of years, many years, have also put in a lot of effort into research and development to develop their own processes and, to try and find alternate processes for existing molecules as well. Look at the generic space in the agrochemical space, for example. India has developed a lot of molecules with generic processes, with new processes, not the ones which have been, which were initially kind of the processes of the inventor. We have created alternate processes which are greener, purer, and better in terms of manufacturing capabilities also. So I think that is definitely there. Once we have the R&D piece in, what is also important is how much are we in terms of government and even as industry promoting research and development locally. I think we're all the companies that we know in the specialty chemical sector are all working very, very focused on developing their own research and development programs. I think we're going much more towards inching one step in innovation every day. Now, where do we have the design capability to design the manufacturing plants? Absolutely. We have done fantastically well on that as well. Whether it's engineering or designing capabilities, we've done very well. Environmental capabilities, yes, we are changing, and I think very soon India will inch up to global standards, because that pressure will also continue. And with the international players start coming to India now for the requirements, I think India is already pumping itself to become a good environmental, responsible environmental player in the game. Financial capability, there's enough financial capability available in India as well. So if you look at the larger piece, if you look at everything, for us, the key points that are required for us to become self-reliant are definitely there. And I think they're all inching towards that. If you look at China and look at India, I think like you just said a while ago, almost 43% of the global specialty chemical requirement is currently being sourced from China. And India is just about 3.5 to 4%. If you look at it, I think there's a large scope that is available. I think intermediates to start with, then of course the end products as well. I think we have good capabilities to do that, and I'm very hopeful and I'm very optimistic about how we are going to achieve this. Just to tell you, Bharat Chemicals actually did the first ever agrochemical process, which was generic and kind of developed totally in-house, totally Atmanirbhar internal, was with the wheat herbicide isoprotron way back in the 70s. And ever since, there have been generation of individual processes, R&D processes, which are kind of totally, in the early days, of course, we did not patent them, but we continued to do that. And that culture continued for the company. If you look at us today, our import dependence is very, very low. And I think everybody in India has that capability to do that as well. We can reduce that dependence on foreign raw materials and intermediates, and we can become self-reliant. I'm absolutely hopeful on that.
Thanks, Nilesh. Thanks a lot for your thoughts. We'll come back to you with some of the points on what you mentioned. But let me kind of first go to the other speakers. Let me now invite Mr. Samir Somaiya. So Samir, you as an organization and you as a person have been focused a lot on sustainable, not just products and processes, but even raw material. But as far as the overall aspect of growth opportunities for specialty chemicals is concerned, I would request you to share your thoughts on both these aspects of how do you see the sector growing and harnessing the opportunities, what is required to be done, and also share your own thoughts and experience on the sustainability side.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. A pleasure to be here. As you mentioned in your starting slides, India is importing a very large quantity of its energy needs, its chemical needs, and then within that, its specialty chemical needs. And India is a young country. It's also got a low per capita use of specialty chemicals. So if you couple with the fact that the country is growing and that it's a young country with a low per capita use, we see that the demand-supply gap is there as an opportunity for us as a country that we can become more Atmanirbhar. And then, again, we talked about sustainability. Our company, Godavari Biorefineries, uses agriculture feedstock, sugarcane, biomass to use as a feedstock for the chemistries. All around the world, we're seeing a climate change. Consumer demand, supply chain demand, customer demand is wanting a more sustainably sourced product and a more smaller carbon footprint. Moving towards a circular economy, renewable feedstock, recycling, reuse. And customers are coming from various places. They may be international customers who reach out to you. They may be local customers whom we might work who want to develop a Indian supplier, as somebody on the same panel and we discussed just before starting. Or it could also be a local supplier who's looking at a local customer who's looking at an international market. And if you look at the way the Europeans are now talking about their new Green Deal, there is great pressure on various companies globally, which may be located in India and overseas, to show that they are doing real, meaningful steps towards having better, greener, lower carbon footprint products. And, you talked about research. Now, we can't just do this on our own. You have to work with customers because you're not often making drop-ins. Drop-ins are those which are exact substitutes for what was otherwise purchased in a fossil feedstock. You're making sometimes products which are from renewables, which may have the same, or if you have a very good research group, a better properties than what you are replacing. I know Gharda Chemicals and some of the work they've done, they've created products with far better properties than that was otherwise there. And so in these projects, knowledge, co-working across companies, across organizations, and across geographies is extremely critical and crucial. I think, research and development teams have to be working with each other. Nilesh talked about the fact that whether we as India have knowledge, manpower, woman power, people power to actually develop new chemistries, new processes, new life science processes. And I think I agree with him. We absolutely have the capabilities to do it. What we need is to first accept failure. I think we need to celebrate good, meaningful attempts at trying to do something. And if we create a climate that celebrates failure, is the only possible way in which we will achieve real success. And I think that is what we need to do. The other issue, I think, is in specialty chemicals, scale is not such an issue because specialty chemicals by design are not something like a cracker, for example. They are smaller, and also if you're doing work in a skincare industry, if you're doing work in cosmetics, if you have a specialty agrochemical, you do not need to, the size of scale is possible over here. Once again, I agree with Nilesh that the ability to do pilot plants, research, to even design processes, and even to do basic engineering. And then there are enough companies in India which can also do detailed engineering. I think as a country, we really have the knowledge to take this forward. My experience in at least a little bit of the work we do in specialty chemicals, because Godavari buys sugarcane, but it makes products that go into mining. For example, we do work in mining industry where our products get sold across Africa, South America. We do work in fragrance chemistry. We sell to companies in Europe, USA, Japan. We do skincare work. So I think one thing that we need to do better is to get a better understanding of application. We might be very good at process development, chemical development, but I think one where knowledge really is supreme is also on how well that product works in applications. What is it? We are to move from selling chemicals to marketing solutions, to fulfilling a customer need. And I think that's where we need to transform ourselves to. Our starting materials, when we talk about feedstock, India has an abundance of sun and soil. And when water is used judicially, agriculture feedstock is extremely interesting because you don't run out of it. If you do it well, you can have the same this year as you did the last year. So I think, putting it all together, there's a great demand pull coming. Sustainable raw materials are only going to be there. The market is growing. The specialty chemicals currently India is importing. We have the knowledge, people, power in the country. I think we have to become Atmanirbhar and have the confidence, celebrate a culture of trying until you succeed. So that's my take. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Samir. That's a very interesting angle. A couple of things that you mentioned, I would like to kind of come back, and maybe we can have that when we discuss the overall things with across the panel. But I think better understanding of applications and having solution orientation is something which is definitely very important as we think of how do we kind of leverage the knowledge and co-working that we are focusing on. Let's move to Anand now. So Anand, you have been you lead the fine and specialty chemicals for Deepak Nitrite, and Deepak has recently made investment in a large plant. So why don't you share your thoughts on how do you see the growth in specialty chemicals, and capexes that are required, and how do you see various opportunities shaping up for the Indian specialty chemicals?
Yeah, I just first I would like to thank for this forum here. It's a pleasure to be present in this today. Thanks a lot for inviting over and making our views here. So appreciate what's going on here. I think one of the key points that should be coming out is I liked what has been said by Nilesh and Samir so far. Two things I would like to pick up on in addition to what they've said is engineering is one of the areas where I think India came up pretty well and has been doing extremely well as far as chemical industry is concerned. There's a lot of sourcing that's happening for engineering technology from India across the globe. And if we look at the kind of infrastructure we end up putting in India, most of them are sourced internally. So at one point of time, we're looking at the value chain in terms of what we go in, but the capexes are majorly driven internally. So this is one of the best things that we can have. The infrastructure is very well supporting that. I think in terms of technology that we deploy in those capexes, that's exactly where the challenge is, which goes back to the R&D and the innovations that would come out of it. So there are two ways in which we need to look at it, and I would love if we can debate on that today is how do we make the products as one topic, and Samir nicely said, is about how we actually use the products, which is looking at how the consumers are ability to use our products. And this is where making things which are more relevant to each consumer across the world is where the differentiation is. So even though you make a specialty chemical, the way you make it would be the same, but the way consumers are consuming the product is exactly where the regional differences come in. And that's one area which is where we need to now start focusing on, because that's the value of the specialty chemical, which can bring back some knowledge or some information that modifies the way we make it. And this is one of the areas that I think we should invest a little bit in terms of R&D. And that's where two people are needed. One who looks at how is it being consumed, and the other one who looks at how that gets translated into a product feature. So this is one area where I would want to see that. The other thing which I would like to bring about is we are becoming attractive because of a variety of reasons that were shared and popularly known today as a destination for picking products. So we are becoming a place of choice. And this is where our abilities to translate those opportunities into action is fully driven by us as a group. The challenge today, I think most of the time we go is in terms of the logistical exports. I think the infrastructure in terms of one, Devendra, which you nicely pointed out, is the parks, development of parks. How well do we bring up industrial parks? How quickly we facilitate them so that they are housing and giving a protection to the growth that would be needed to cater to these emerging demands, either internally or externally. It was nice to see 9 large double-digit growths across all the products that you had on the board there. And these means that at least in 7 years' time, they're going to double. Yeah, 6 to 7 years' time, if you're looking at doubling all of them, the kind of parks that we would need to house the manufacturing to support them is going to be immense. On the other hand, if we couple that with the export requirement that would come in, which is actually a nice base to have industrial scale, this is one of the constraints that we were looking at. So the in-house consumption plus export scale is what gives us what we manage here in India. And here, I would say the infrastructure that we have in terms of export logistics is something that is going to come in because of a reliability in terms of keeping up our word. So how well do we keep up our promises to our customers is something that the world would be watching for, and that's something we should focus on too.
Thanks, Anand. Thanks a lot. Important aspects. I think you brought up a point, especially on infrastructure, as well as how do we make sure that we keep our promises with our customers and are seen as a dependable source of supply, especially from an exports perspective, or even for that matter, domestic market. And I will come back to that aspect. But let me kind of now invite Dr. Rao. Dr. Rao, why don't you share your thoughts? I know you represent or lead a vertical within Atul, which probably is the most vibrant and was the most I would say the first one to see success as far as exports and India's dominance is concerned. So I would like to hear your thoughts on how do you believe specialty chemicals beyond colors and dyes, some of the newer chemicals, how will India see success, and what is required in those areas? Dr. Rao, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourselves, please.
I'm sorry. I just put down some of my thoughts into the slides. Can I share my
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I hope you will be able to see them, all of you. Yeah. Basically, I've tried to put in together all my ideas because I'm representing colorant industry as a whole, dyes and pigments and intermediates. The fastest growth we are expecting to come is from the intermediate industry. So about 36 to 40 keep varying, but considering that pigments, dyes and intermediates together more or less an equal share of this pie. And as you rightly mentioned, even in this industry, China is the dominant player, over 40% they have. But India is not at all backward in this colorant industry. We still have a 16% global, entire colorants as a group. But however, we have a tremendous potential to grow because we have a huge consumption as well as possibility to go into a different dyes and pigment areas. Why this industry is so important? Because the user industry is going much faster, and also the user industry's growth is significantly going to impact India's domestic consumption as well as for export. So although I put average CAGR is 2 to 3%, but textile industry is expected to be over 3%. Some of the plastics will go over 5%. It depends on the industry to industry. So this is going to go closer to 50 billion very soon. So we put down ideas into three major segments. One is the specialty intermediates, which is generally we consider as a part of specialty chemicals. One interesting area I wanted to share with all of you is that India is a huge consumer of anthraquinone and its derivatives, and already it is over 2,000 tons, expected to reach 5,000 tons, but we don't have a single manufacturer of anthraquinone. And second is 2-ethyl anthraquinone, which is very critical. We are now expanding capacity of hydrogen peroxide, and we are reaching almost close to 500,000 tons. But one single raw material which is so critical for peroxide production is 2-ethyl anthraquinone, is no one is producing, and we are import dependent on this. And the price of this is varying within few months from $7 to $17. Again, drops down to 12. Huge gaps coming up in this. This influences the price of such a commodity product like peroxide. And 1-aminoanthraquinone, there is no producer in the country, which is a very important for both dyes and pigment industry. A large number of intermediates are based on this product. So this is one area we feel that country must focus upon. Apart from that, there is a huge amount of cyanuric chlorides and other acids are being imported. So we have already represented to the government, we have submitted on behalf of Dyestuff Manufacturing Association, a list of about 50 intermediates should be prioritized to be produced in the country. We will take up group by group with the discussions with government, but most of these are included in that list, close to 50 of them. Coming to the dyes, India has really achieved a global competitiveness, and today we have a much bigger share than even our biggest competitor in reactive dyes. But the same is not true for other dyes. Especially in the dispersed and other segments, we need to increase because our capacities are very small compared to what the sizes of plants available next door. And we don't have a single manufacturer of indigo in India, and we produce over 1 billion meters of denim fabric, and we consume over 12,000 tons of indigo and also over 12,000 tons of sulfur. Sulfur, we have in-house strong potential of producing in India. We are producing much more than our requirement. But however, indigo is not a single manufacturer is available. This is one area of interest to the industry. Coming to the pigments, we see that we are slowly gaining a good market and reputation, as well as an excellent application areas developed by our industrial colleagues. This is helping us. However, we are still lacking in the diketene derivatives and carbazole intermediates. And we also need a large amount of beta-naphthalene derivatives we are importing. We don't have backward integration of these, which industry is largely dependent on. The pricing is very volatile of these segments. Lastly, I would like to summarize saying that we have to minimize our dependence on these N-1 imports. There are quite a few of them can be definitely managed now. And we also have to look at the possibility of non-conventional way of producing methanol, especially the Canadian company, Ecrima, has put up a plant from producing methanol from waste. And we look at the technologies for producing continuous products. And we should also look at the possibility of strengthening our connection between the industry and academia, where the sustainable solutions and bio-based chemicals can be produced and work together and develop for the future. This is, in short, from my thought process, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you very much. So there are a few very interesting points that came up as you know, each one of you were sharing your thoughts, and I think I would like to kind of at least pick a few of them and see if there are some additional thoughts that the other panelists would like to share around that. One of the thoughts which kind of has been brought up is around scale, and also linked to that is the fact that our feedstock situation. While Samir did mention that we have plenty of biomass and sun and a constant source of biomass, but the fact is today most of the feedstocks, we always will be a gas or oil starved country. We're not likely to be self-sufficient in that space. And what that means is that our dependence on imports on whatever stage we get the feedstocks in would continue to be high. Okay, so some thoughts around how quickly can the transition towards the biomass based feedstocks can happen, because I don't think it's something which can happen overnight. This is something which will take a lot of time, and especially to scale up to meet the overall requirements. What that means is that if I'm short of 4 naphtha crackers today, I would continue to face shortage for some time to come. Okay, yes, we need to focus on moving towards biomass based feedstock, but so that's one point. Related to that is again taking the examples from China, where global players have made very, very significant and deep investments. We are talking of complexes which are very large, which have an impact and opportunity generation for downstream specialty chemicals as well, with assurance of intermediates and feedstock. So I think these two things are very connected to my mind, and I would like to hear some of the panelists talk about this. Maybe Nilesh, you can share your thoughts on that, and then we move to Anand as well.
I think from a feedstock standpoint, from biomass, I think I'd rather hear from Samir, because he has he's directly into it, and he would be in a position to give us a better picture about that currently. But I think from a feedstock standpoint, we are still about gaining the base that is required. But of course, like Samir said earlier as well, the issue about sustainability and the environmental concerns will continue to come in the way as we keep talking about that. Even if we get in naphtha crackers in, there are other ways also. People are doing a lot of work on coal, trying to extract BTX from it and trying to, solve this issue. So I think from a research and development standpoint, we're doing quite a bit in trying to solve that problem in India as well. But I'm quite interested in this hearing from Samir as to how he sees this from the biomass standpoint. How does biomass based feedstock show up? Does it show up in the near future? What is his sense? Because we've also been trying to work on this very regularly, trying to see how we can, kind of utilize a combination of the two.
So Samir, maybe you can come in here before we go to Anand on that. But key point is how quickly can we switch and what will be the scale?
No, I think firstly, this is a journey. We're not going to be able to snap a finger and create the feedstock or the product we need. We are very clear that there is a big import, even as we speak today, for specialty chemicals. That imports are going to keep growing unless we build our own capacity to rise to that. So that's one.
True.
To respond on the biomass point of view, I think similarly, as we build capacity to do products, we should also keep thinking of building capacity to have biomass. Just to give you an example, when you talked about gas, that we will be a long-term gas-based economy. If you know, the government of India recently has created a Satat program for the creation of biogas, bio-CNG, primarily to meet the energy requirements. But there is if you look at it, they think that you can easily, but they have set a target of meeting 40% of India's bio-CNG requirement or biogas requirement of that is 25 million tons by 2025. Now, whether that is possible or not, in terms of timing, the feedstock is clearly there to generate the biomass in a distributed fashion. So biogas, that is bio-CNG. So my point being, we have to look at capacity building and capacity creation at all ends of the spectrum, from a feedstock point of view, from a research and development point of view, process chemistry point of view, final product and applications. None of them will happen together. They will move at different speeds, but we have to keep working at it. And I don't think that the idea is you got to move to become greener. It's very difficult. It is one thing to say greener, and it's another thing to say only green. So I think what I'm trying to say is that we've looked at a fossil economy for a long time. In the absence of a green economy, we should seriously think that it is really possible to create a green, lower carbon footprint to supplement the economy we are in. And we'll see how kind of disruptive that will be as we go forward. But I think that the possibility is much greater than any of us imagine today.
Yeah, I appreciate your point that I think it's important to see that, these two streams will have to coexist for a significant amount of time, at least definitely in the foreseeable future.
If I may, just for a sec, if you look at shale gas, now I'm not saying shale is fossil, but nobody thought shale was going to be a possibility in the US 20 years ago. And today has completely disrupted the energy matrix of the world and certainly made USA a gas exporter. So I think, I'm just saying that there are possibilities. We just have to go after them. And I think we have tremendous quantities of biomass in this country. Finding it, collecting it, transforming it, I think it's possible. Imagination has to be there and a will to do it.
Let me bring in Anand right now. And Anand, if you can also, talk about feedstocks and what could be the speed of conversion to some of the newer things.
I would talk more in terms of what I've experienced in life pretty closely in terms of this particular topic, and it's been kind of close to the heart. So let's talk about a few things like biomass. One of the biggest things is as a country, we don't convert enough of agricultural anchorage into a product. So our productivity in agriculture is pretty low. Now, given that much is a space that you can that is areable or available for agriculture, and we are food starved, this becomes one of the primary issues that always will confront us when we're looking at using the land for industrialization versus using the land for giving food. Yeah, and this has been a controversial topic quite along. If you see across the world, we are as humans, we have been trying to grapple and live this fact. How do we balance this as a country is one of the biggest challenge. Let me give you two examples to what I'm saying. Um, if you're looking at replacing fossil sources in chemicals, let's step back and look at fossil being used, being replaced by biomass in petroleum itself. I'm coming to biodiesel. Okay. If you look at what happened in terms of the biodiesel usage that happened for the palm oil industry, and this we know which went the other way, and the amount of palm oil that got grown and the anchorage that got in, the productivity that came in was the sole supporter for this conversion. Okay, and there you see that petroleum usage was fueled with doping that would go in, that's allowed. So that the mixture was allowed in 1%, 2%, 4%, 5%, and now they're talking about 10%. So we will always be competing in terms of what is non-fuel sources, but the primary reason where the land would be used is for food. So I think there's a bigger question there. Would we give away the land to feed the people and make food more expensive? I think this will be a question that will be coming up. But the primary driver for that should be increasing our agricultural yields. And this is where you see in terms of per capita usage, we are still not there in terms of agricultural produce. So that's going to be the basic reason where people will shift to what. And this will be controlled in the end. So even though we would say that shifting to fuels, shifting to biomass can be a solution, I don't see that could be a solution in the immediate term. But having a vision in terms of where we would go is extremely essential when we step on this topic. That would be my opinion in that. Having said that, we've seen a couple of few users, like how Samir has been saying, they don't use products which are today currently got alternative use. They're actually using products which have been used for its purpose, and what is left out is getting converted into materials. Now, that's a real good opportunity where we should capitalize on. And this will open vistas, because then you take what you want from the biomass, and what is left out is what you convert. And there are enough chemistries which are being worked around on this. We've even seen acrylics, for example, being propagated coming from such waste or byproduct use. So if that comes in, then the whole polymer industry is changing its face in terms of changing from a demand of propylene, for example, that would be needed.
Yeah, thanks, Anand. Yeah, I think some of the things, especially on whether they are biomass based or biodegradable, etc., there is a significant shift that we are seeing both in packaging and certain other industries as well. There's another area which I wanted to kind of bring up, and it did get mentioned, which was more around the strengths on engineering, strengths on R&D, strengths on basic scientific thinking. But we are more oriented towards process-related R&D and work as compared, because we don't have too many products to our credit. Okay, there aren't any patents or that many patents, and so I think somewhere we need to also really see how do we kind of bring more collaboration and bring some world-class R&D happening out of India, because we have the basic talent and the know-how and the ability. So I think that's one thing which I wanted to kind of definitely flag. The other thing is, probably as a sector having a better and more organized strategic thinking. How do we pick our battles? There are people talked about, and Dr. Rao just mentioned that, when you look at the value chain, you find while you have a lot of the ingredients there, but some key ingredients not being manufactured in India at all. So is there a need to kind of organize ourselves as an overall ecosystem and as a sector better, along with the collaboration with the government, and say, pick our battles? Look at the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and say, this is a subsegment or a subsector that I would, as a country, as an industry, excel in. And I would be known for this, and I will be the leader in this. and then go hammer and tongs, doing that very well. Building the infrastructure, building the supply chain, the supply base, and the know-how and the R&D, etc., etc. So that's the point. I would want reactions from all the panelists, and we can quickly go around, because I think, to my mind, saying that we need to do a lot is one thing, but let's pick our battles and go really good at it. I mean, I would want each one of you to give your thoughts on that, please. Nilesh, would you want to go first?
So Devinder, to your point about product versus process development in India, I think you're right, because if you look at the product inventions and the cost of product inventions or innovations, the cost there is prohibitively high. And I think until we as a system, which includes the government, the private industries, and also the government-run industries and the academia come together to try and resolve this, to try to reduce that particular cost for product development, we will be in a better position. Until that, it becomes extremely prohibitive. Take, for example, I think pharmaceuticals, we have done pretty well. I think there's a lot of focus there. But take our area, which is agrochemicals for that matter. I think very little gets done in India in terms of product development. But of course, now that scenario is changing. People are trying to develop their own products. If you look at the agrochemical molecules in the last couple of years, you see a lot of focus from China. You see a lot of focus from Japan. You see a lot of focus from the big boys, which is the Bayer, BASF kind of companies. So you see that focus. But unfortunately, Indian companies, we are still not focused towards developing these products. But we're more focused towards making these better processes, more efficient processes, greener processes, and trying to reduce or improve the product quality for that matter. I think the cost is the biggest prohibitive factor in this product development side, which needs to be addressed. And I think looking at the focus that all of us are now putting in for R&D and to develop products, I think we are not too far away from getting some. We can always see some in the biologicals area. A lot of product development is happening. So there is focus. We can't say that there is none, but I think not too much activity is there in that area. I think the biggest constraint would still be the cost factor there.
Okay, Samir, your thoughts?
I think yours is a very interesting question. How do we choose which battles we want to, which do you pick? I think it's a mindset change to be able to graduate from process improvements or even making processes to getting into specialities. Specialities by design are also performance. So I think we have to very much get into performance. And when you get into performance, there is a huge knowledge skill set that, let's say, the larger companies in the world that have been there, done that, that they have inherited. And so we have to build our own, own encyclopedia of knowledge to do that. The way we are looking at it as a company is we are looking at where we are strong in feedstock, as in biomass, and taking it, and where we are good in process. So where we have a good scale, and then we're working with customers for their specialty needs. So we're not trying to do that in isolation of our customers. It's not a battle that we are picking. It's partners that we are picking, where we think that the triple benefit of having good size feedstock, which is also working on low carbon, good process chemistry, and then where customer, you're meeting and fulfilling a customer needs. So fundamentally, not picking a battle, but picking partners.
Thanks, Samir. Very useful points. And I think we're running out of time, maybe another 4 or 5 minutes. So very quickly, let's get Dr. Rao and Anand in, and then we will probably summarize our thoughts.
Devinderji, basically, I tend to agree with what Nilesh said. Is predominantly our products are pretty well established in terms of their application areas and their performance. So we mainly focusing on process improvements, efficiency improvements, and minimizing the impurity levels. That's what the today's, rather than going and developing the brand new products which are altogether new molecules. Yes, certain extent that is also happening, but major activity predominantly is focusing on efficiency improvement and cost reduction areas. And that's what I feel, because we use a huge amount of solvent processes, converting from solvent process to fusion process, and ensuring that elimination of acid in the process and things like that would take our industry much ahead of what we feel.
Yeah. Anand, your thoughts, please.
I think in terms of where we choose to win today, it's a very broad canvas that's available for us. There's enough pockets where we can excel and gain on. I actually like this idea where you take a particular thing and try to get a whole expertise built around it and known. I think for quite a few areas of agrochemicals, and we know that India is very well known as the primary source for those molecules. Yeah, India is also very well known to harness all the required competencies that are required in terms of delivering it, and we are also known to be the organophosphates of the world. So, let's take organophosphates. Historically, we were pretty strong in that. How do we build across that, and how do we move around it is one of the key areas, and I think it's not difficult to take that in. But that we are a pretty small player today. How do we go from that scale as an internal consumer to a global scale where that recognition comes in is exactly the challenge which the organizations needs to overcome. I can be pretty proud of this organization, Deepak, that we've taken a few of such chemicals and really built it to global scale. And if you look at organizations in India that have done these particular things, there are many, and you can pick across India where they are building it. But in the whole scheme of things, we tend to minimize that and overlook it. Probably that's a new way to look at Devendra, and I appreciate what you said there. And then you would see nuggets of what they are sitting on, and those nuggets, how do we grow around them, is exactly the way to go.
Thanks, Anand. Thanks a lot. So I think we probably close to the hour. Let me kind of just first of all thank all of the eminent panel members for their thoughts. But I would like to kind of just say that in the end, I think we all agree that there is a very significant headroom for growth as far as the specialty chemical sector in India is concerned. Feedstocks will be a challenge. There is a possibility of coexistence with biomass-based things. I think there is a need to have a lot better collaboration between academia, industry, the government, and even the customers global. I think we need to focus on developing our infrastructure and making it more robust. And I think we'll need probably to have a deeper discussion around how government's policies can probably help us, channelize our energies better and focus on a few battles, as I said, and come out leaders in those areas. So with that, I would like to thank all the panelists again, and over to you, Mitra.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mitra, you're on mute.
Sorry. There are two questions if you would like to take that in last 2 minutes.
Okay, sorry. I mean, these probably came towards the end. I did
Yes.
check a couple of minutes back. So there is a question around how do we see Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence, and all the emerging technologies impacting this industry? And a question specifically focused for Samir, where they're saying, how do we see things happening, especially around the biomass-based R&D working and so on and so forth. So I will let Mitra, if we have time, let me kind of pose the first question to maybe Dr. Rao and Anand, and Samir, obviously, then to you for the question specifically around how do we address the R&D around sustainability and biomass-based feedstock. Industry 4.0, Anand, your thoughts?
I think it's Industry 4.0 is something which is pretty interesting, and a lot needs to be done in India in terms of coming out on this. If you're looking at scale and we're operating it efficiently, I'm a big supporter of safety at all times. This is one of the areas where you can look at predictive failure areas and act very early. I think one of the things that we as chemical industry leaders need to look at is how do we make this chemical arena a safe place, and the community at large can trust us. Here, I don't mean in terms of customers, I mean in terms of general population. Okay, not giving them a fear that, oh, there's a chemical plant next to my house or next to my town. How do we not give that fear? I think that's exactly where we would come to. And with scale, we also increase the risk. And that's exactly where I think it's one of the must areas of investments.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Industry 4.0 is something where, I mean, all emerging technologies, which could be put on under the umbrella of Industry 4.0, is something which the industry needs to leverage, not just to make themselves more, safe and adherence to various SHE requirements, but also to improve efficiency, improve customer proximity, improve supply chain performance. And I think it's something which the industry globally is leveraging, and the Indian industry is focusing on that, and probably we will see more and more of that. Samir, we are running out of time, so I would request you to kind of react to the other question, which is more around how can people work with organizations like yourselves and see how the whole thing about biomass based feedstocks and R&D around sustainability, sustainable products can be used.
I'll give a very quick response. I think it's happening. So when you say it's not happening to Dr. Bilson Shukla, it is happening. We see customers, as I said, from India, within our own country, and from overseas. We're talking to a company in Holland right now to meet one of their needs for a specialty chemical, but which is derived from a low carbon source. We're working with our own farmers to see how learning from them how you can go to low carbon farming. So I think it's very much happening. We have to you have to navigate a line between keeping what is confidential to you, and at the same time having borders which are porous so that 1 + 1 = 11. I think it's very much happening as we speak, and without it we cannot go too far. Sitting in your own system. So that's my response.
Thank you, Samir, and thanks a lot, everybody.